Dr. Diran held professorships at prestigious universities in Istanbul, Turkey. He authored best-selling books, and he was a highly celebrated astronomer and psychologist. He was last heard from in a dungeon in Iconium. What happened to him? Hear his story and learn how he read his way into the Adventist faith. This and much more on today's Mission 360. Hello, I'm Gary Krause and welcome to Mission 360. On today's program, we travel to India, where many Adventist students face a major challenge to their faith. They are required to take an exam on the Sabbath day. We also visit with Gina Wahlen, editor of our Mission Quarterlies. She was recently in Euro-Asia and brings us exciting stories of faith and mission. We'll also hear the amazing story of Dr. Diran, a man of exceptional spirituality. But let's begin in West Papua, Indonesia, where nutmeg, an exotic fruit, is used to welcome visitors to the village.
In the jungles of West Papua, Indonesia, villagers harvest nutmeg to be shipped all over the world. People in many countries love this unique flavor in their meals. To this village, nutmeg is used to welcome visitors into their community. To prepare this special greeting, someone must climb into a tree and pick the fruit. Each fruit has a flower inside. Once collected, the nutmeg is spread out to dry. The dried pieces are strung together to make a welcome necklace. Darren Boyd is a missionary from the United States who has lived in Indonesia for a few years now. He has visited this village before, and the people welcome him again with a special nutmeg greeting.
I'm interested in people's needs because that was Christ's method. Christ's method alone will bring true success in winning the hearts.
Darren is spreading the gospel by building relationships with people. He has been visiting this village to see what needs this village may have and how these needs can be met. He looks to Jesus as the perfect example.
And that is, he met their need, and then after he had met that need, he gained their confidence. Then he said, "Come follow me."
Kami sangat rindu jalan masuk ke sana.
Over time, Darren has come to know the village chief, David. David learned about the Adventist message through studying the Bible. He used to worship another day of the week until he learned about the Sabbath. He began faithfully observing the Sabbath and tells everyone in his village about Jesus. If anyone is interested in learning more, David will visit their home to teach them from the Bible. Although he is an important figure in the village, David puts his status aside to direct people toward Jesus.
Those who accept and believe that this is true come together. We must proclaim the law of God.
Now, many people in David's village are Seventh-day Adventist. They meet in a church member's home for worship. Darren visits David's village every once in a while to see how this congregation is doing. Membership is growing, and soon they will need a bigger building to meet in. This is just one of the many villages Darren works in. He teaches, trains, and preaches throughout the many islands of West Papua. The rough terrain, world religions, and number of languages make the mission challenges apparent in this region of the world. Through sacrifice and prayer, new congregations may be started in these challenging areas. Please pray for people like Darren who are on the front lines of mission. These workers often serve far from home and sometimes in challenging conditions. Pray for growing congregations, like the one in David's village, and pray that those who have never heard the name of Jesus before will come to know him soon. Thank you for supporting the mission of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
My guest is Dr. Benjamin Baker, who is an historian and works for the Office of Archives, Statistics and Research here at the Seventh-day Adventist World Headquarters. Dr. Baker, thanks for joining us. You have a terrific story, which you actually wrote in this magazine here, Mission 360, but I want to hear it from you. The story of the man born in Armenia.
Sure. Diran Chrakian, as you said, was born in Armenia in 1870. And as did many Armenians of his day, he immigrated to Constantinople, the capital of the Ottoman Empire. And
Istanbul, right?
Sure, today's Istanbul. Early on, he was a lover of knowledge and a seeker after truth. In his teenage years, he became a mystic and embraced atheistic humanism. He published several volumes of poetry that were bestsellers of his day, and he obtained a professorship at the Armenian University of Constantinople. It was in the fall of 1914 when Chrakian was in his immense personal library, and there was a knock at his door, and an Adventist literature evangelist named Nicholas Triphonides was escorted in by Chrakian's housekeeper. And as was his custom, Diran was smoking a cigar, and Triphonides began his spiel, showing him the books. And Diran Chrakian said, "I have all these books right here in my library," and he was pulling them out and showing them to Triphonides. And Triphonides said, "Well, if you have these books, then why are you smoking this cigar?" And so, duly rebuked, it said that Chrakian never smoked again. But the Word was made flesh, and Chrakian began reading the Adventist literature that he had hitherto neglected. And like I said earlier, he was a seeker after knowledge, and he saw here a system of truth that intrigued him. And so the next seventh day, the next Saturday, which to him was an odd day to go to church, he found himself walking to the little one-room meeting place of the Adventists in Constantinople. And there, all of the different ethnic groups were worshiping God, singing, praying, reading the Bible in this small room. You could liken the Constantinople of that day to London or New York. It was very cosmopolitan. But the different ethnic groups didn't always mingle together so peacefully. And here, Chrakian saw Jews, Greeks, Armenians, Turks, Northern Europeans all worshiping together and loving each other. And he was really impressed by this. There was a minister named Emil Fragiger. He was Swiss. He was sent to Constantinople by the Adventist Church. And he preached a message that absolutely riveted Chrakian. And there was also a little Greek girl who was the interpreter named Diamondola, and she will factor into the story later. To make a long story short, Chrakian accepted the Adventist faith, and he really, as did often in the early years of our church, he read himself into the truth. It was presented initially, but then he went back and he was a scholar and he read himself into it. But no sooner had he joined the Adventist church than his friends and his family, including his wife, they disowned him. And the years following were very difficult for Chrakian because just after he was converted to Adventism, Turkey entered World War I. And this was a period of immense turbulence, not only for the country, all of Europe, all of the world, but Armenians in Constantinople. In late 1914, he was drafted into the Turkish army, and he was brought up on charges because he would not work on the seventh-day Sabbath. And he witnessed before the military tribunals. On August 1, 1916, when he paid money to get out of the army, there was a tax where you could, if you paid the tax, he would be discharged. But later he was imprisoned for spreading subversive teachings against the government. He was just simply preaching Adventism, and he was imprisoned. And it was said that when his new Adventist friends bailed him out of jail, that he didn't want to leave because he was in the midst of a sermon. And so this was a man that was known for his exceptional spirituality. He spent entire nights in prayer, And it was said that he was surrounded by a holy atmosphere. And when the interpreter, Diamondola, became sick and died, it was said that he resurrected her from the dead so that she could be raised up to do more missionary work. She was an exceptional missionary in Turkey. Anyhow, at the war's end in November 1918, Chrakian established a church in Constantinople, and the next 3 years he labored all throughout Asia Minor, including some of the areas where Paul worked, like Iconium, and he was said to win scores of souls. But in 1921, as were many Armenians, he was imprisoned and he was taken in what's known as the Death March of the Armenian genocide. And he was led throughout Greece and Turkey in chains. He was whipped, he was beaten, he was treated very severely, and he became sick. But it was said that to the end, he treated his persecutors and oppressors with Christian grace, and he was preaching until the end, and he was being a witness for Christ. And he died on July 8, 1921.
Wow.
That's the life of Diran Chrakian. We don't know much about him, but what we know is a man of exceptional spirituality and a light for Christ in a very dark period of this world's history.
Fantastic story. And thanks so much for sharing that, Dr. Baker.
Yes.
Viewers at home, Mission 360 magazine, you can go to read this magazine online and you'll get more details of Dr. Baker's story right there. Fascinating, fascinating man, and what a rich history. Thank you so much. And we'll be right back right after this break. Welcome back to Mission 360. I'm talking with Gina Wahlen, who is the editor of these magazines right here, Youth and Adult Mission and Children's Mission, or otherwise known to many in the Adventist Church as the Mission Quarterlies, which are read in Sabbath schools all around the world every Sabbath. Gina, thank you so much for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Now, you and your family have served as missionaries. Where were you working?
We were in Russia for 6 years, from 1992 to 1998, at the seminary there in Zokski. And then later on, we were missionaries in the Philippines at a school called IAS, and we were there some years ago as well for nearly 5 years.
So mission is very important to your family.
Absolutely. Mission is in our heart for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're delighted to have you on our program again. Now, 1992 in Russia, that's an interesting time to be there.
A very interesting time. The Soviet Union had just fallen, and things were in a bit of limbo. The country wasn't sure where it was headed yet. Food was very hard to come by. I remember we bought a large sack of potatoes, and that first winter through, we lived on that sack of potatoes.
Wow. And you were telling me earlier about water was not a commodity that was easily obtainable.
Right. We lived on the 3rd floor of the apartment building there, and we were very fortunate when we had running water, sometimes in the morning, in the evening, some days not at all, and so we would just haul it in buckets. And we had a little baby in cloth diapers at the time, so that was really fun. I learned to appreciate water.
I'm sure you did. Gina, you recently went back to, not to Russia, but to Ukraine. What did you find when you went back?
A lot of changes. Things have improved a lot, and I was glad to see that there. But something, Gary, that has not changed, and that's the people and their dedication to the Lord and to mission. I was, as always, inspired by their stories. Many, many great stories.
Tell me one of those stories.
Andre is a young man that really impressed me. He had a great story, real dedication to the Lord, but he didn't start out that way. He was just a non-believer. As a kid, he became best friends with another little boy called Pavel. In Andre and Pavel would do lots of things together, and they grew up together, and they decided they wanted to go to college together. So one day they traveled from their home over to the far west of Ukraine to a city called Lviv. Lviv is a very beautiful, very old city. It has passed between Poland and Ukraine back and forth through the centuries. It is currently on the Ukrainian side of the border, and they have a large university there in Lviv. So Pavel went and Andre went, and they took their exams there. And after they got out of the room where the exam was being given, they walked around campus for a little bit, and they saw a big poster for an air show, a military air show. Right there in Lviv, they have a large military base, a large airfield, and this was to celebrate the 40th anniversary of this particular section of the Ukrainian Air Force. And they were really excited. It looked like this was going to be the event, and they wanted to attend. They're looking at the poster and excited about going, and all of a sudden Pavel becomes very quiet. And Andre wonders, what's the problem here? You know, doesn't Pavel want to go to this air show? And Pavel says, Andre, I'm not going to go. And Andre says, why not? Pavel says, well, I noticed the date is actually on a Saturday, and I'm going to be going to church on that day. And Pavel's thinking, are you kidding me? You're going to go to church instead of this fantastic air show? And but he started to think, you know, what's the deal? Why would he be willing to go to church instead of an air show? And so he was invited, why don't you come along? And he thought about this for a while, and Andre decided, well, I want to check out why Pavel is so willing to go to church rather than the air show. He decided to go. So Andre goes to church with Pavel, and he thinks, hey, this is kind of interesting. I like what I'm seeing here. There are friendly people, interesting. I'm kind of glad I went. And later that night, he was even more glad that he had gone, because he found out that that day at the air show was a terrible disaster. Hundreds of people had been killed, many hundreds more were injured severely because there had been a crash. One of the military jets, it was coming out of a roll, it came down and crashed right into the crowd of people. And Andre said, you know, where that airplane crashed is right where I would have been standing. It was right there. And he couldn't believe it. He was so thankful that he had gone to church. And that got him to thinking, maybe there is a God. Maybe I should consider learning more about him. He talked with Pavel about it. Now he's a student at the Adventist seminary in Bucha, which is near the capital city of Kyiv, and he's planning to be a Seventh-day Adventist minister.
Oh, what a story. Oh.
Yeah.
Gina, thank you so much for sharing with us. Now, these stories that you collect in these magazines, for people who may not attend an Adventist church, how can they get access to these stories?
Just go to our website, adventistmission.org, check on the menu called Resources, go down, and you'll find the magazines right there filled with stories like this and many more.
Fantastic. Viewers at home, from Ukraine, we go straight to the country of India.
They get admission for colleges based on the result, and therefore it is very crucial, very determinant for their future life. One cannot think of not attempting their examination if they want to pursue their study further.
Dr. John is principal of Quarterlies Adventist School. Like many Seventh-day Adventist schools in India, Quarterlies is a mission school with about half of the students coming from Adventist families. The school has been accredited through the Indian government as a higher secondary school. This accreditation comes with government-administered testing during the students' 10th year of study. Recently, this crucial test was given on Saturday. Dr. John made an appointment with the Minister of Education for his district and asked that an accommodation be made for his school so that his students could stay true to their faith and not take the exam during Sabbath hours.
He said, I'm also a Christian. I would write an exam on Sabbath, or I would do anything on Saturday. I said, let's not debate on that matter, because your faith is different, my faith is different. I wouldn't do that, and my students won't do that. And therefore, please make it possible for my children to write the exam, make some alternate arrangement.
The Minister of Education did not make an accommodation and told Dr. John to take his issue to the court.
Court passed an order in favor of us to protect their religious faith. The court ordered that exam may be conducted on the same day in the night, after 6 o'clock, in the night.
This court order caused a flood of media to descend on the school campus.
Newspaper and from the TV channel, everywhere people flooded in. And they asked me, what's this? The whole public, the entire public came to know about Sabbath. What is Sabbath and why they keep Sabbath. Now when I go to the government office, I say I'm from the Seventh Day Adventist school, I'm the principal of the Seventh Day Adventist school. Oh, you the exam on Sabbath keepers. Immediately they come, they know. Then when I start explaining, no need to explain, sir, we have read it in the paper.
But this is only a short-term victory. The court order will eventually expire. The long-term solution for Dr. John and the students at Kotarakara is for the school to be accredited by a different organization. Many other Seventh-day Adventist schools in India are affiliated with the Indian Council of Secondary Education. This accrediting body takes special care to administer tests to Adventist schools on Sunday. Currently, Kotarakara facilities will not pass inspection to become a member of the council. Member schools must have adequate classroom space for each student, and this school has far outgrown its current buildings. Because of your financial support of the World Budget and Mission offerings, a new classroom block will be constructed on the Kotarakara campus. The new building will bring 20 new classrooms and allow the school to be ready for the council's inspection. Thank you for your support of the mission of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. To find out more, please visit adventistmission.org.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's 360-degree view of mission around the world, from the dense jungles of West Papua to dungeons in Armenia, from the vast territory of Eurasia to the huge population of India. People are finding hope and joy in the good news of Jesus Christ. If you've enjoyed the stories you've watched today, please accept our free offer of this special Mission 360 DVD. This DVD is full of action-packed mission stories like you've seen on today's program. And if you live in North America, just visit our website or call our toll-free number and ask for your free copy of the Mission 360 DVD. We'll be glad to send it to you. As we close our program, let's take time to reflect upon what God's calling us to do as we watch this music video called I Know You Are. Thanks so much for joining us on today's program. For Adventist Mission, I'm Gary Krause, and I hope you can join me next time right here on Mission 360.
Я знаю, что ты есть в небесной вышине. Не важно, что я здесь, ты помнишь обо мне. Я жду, и в этом смысл, с надеждою свой взгляд я устремляю ввысь. Пусть разное твердят, я верю, ты придешь, я не устану ждать. Простишь все и поймешь, мне важно это знать. Не верю я словам, я жду прихода дня, и ты расскажешь сам, как любишь ты меня. Твердят, что не придешь, не будет перемен, что только ты берешь и не даешь взамен. Я вопреки судьбе всю ложь перетерплю и расскажу тебе, как я тебя люблю. Я верю, ты придешь, я не устану ждать. Простишь все и поймешь, мне важно это знать. Не верю я словам, я жду прихода дня, и ты расскажешь сам, как любишь ты меня. Я верю, ты придешь, я не устану ждать. Простишь все и поймешь, мне важно это знать. Не верю я словам, я жду